Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Hanukkah, Israel and Zionism. Now, I know that Hanukkah has come and passed already, but I'm still thinking about Hanukkah. The modern state of Israel and the rise of Zionism transformed the celebration of Hanukkah. About that, there is no doubt. World over, Jews light candles and play dreidel on Hanukkah, but the reason it has become such a significant Jewish holiday is not simply because of its proximity to the winter holiday that Christians celebrate. It's not the only reason. The significant reason that Hanukkah has become such an important holiday for Jews and has been elevated far beyond what it was 120 years ago even, is because the modern state of Israel and Zionism embraced Hanukkah as a symbol of Jewish fighting and Jewish heroism. When early Zionist thinkers were crystallizing their image of the new Jew, which would become the new Israeli, they searched for historic non-biblical images of tough Jews and fighting Jews. There are plenty of these images in the Bible. Just think Samson, Joshua, Gideon, Deborah, David, Yael, Barak, and many more. But what about post-biblical military heroes? The idea of Jews returning to their ancestral homeland certainly resonates. It's romantic, powerful, and deeply relatable too, especially for Jews in the diaspora, who were suffering the evils of pogroms and widespread Jew hatred. Finding examples of Jews who fight, heroic Jews who fight, that they were searching for was not an easy task within Jewish texts. Rabbinic Judaism, for example, writes the Battle of Hanukkah out of Jewish history. We only find a small mention of the miracle, that is the story of finding a tiny crucible of oil that lasted 8 days. It in no way mentions the battle in that Gemara, in that Talmud. The miracle of oil is found in the Talmud in the tractate of Shabbat. The battle is simply not found in Jewish sources, though we do have Al Hanisim. The book of Maccabees 1 and 2 are found in the Apocrypha. The Catholics have the Apocrypha in their Bible. The Protestants do not. They don't include the book of Maccabees in their Bible. The books of Maccabees are not in the Jewish Bible either. They're not in the Tanakh. The Apocrypha is not there. They did not make it into the Jewish canon. The Zionists of today's modern state of Israel found and embraced the story of the Maccabees and their battle against the Syrian Greeks. The Syrian Greeks were a greater army and an overwhelming culture. The Syrian Greeks were trying to acculturate the Jews into their paganism. They disdained Jewish monotheistic culture. They threw a pig into the Jews' holy temple in Jerusalem. They tried, often unsuccessfully, to lure Jews to pagan tradition and to abandon Jewish life. The Maccabees responded by revolting in a military rebellion. Similarly, the story of Masada, Masada was written out of rabbinic Jewish history. It cannot be found. It can only be found in classical non-Jewish sources. Early Zionist thinkers and leaders of Israel described Masada as a few heroes confronting the powerful Roman legion. Those few Jews heroically chose suicide rather than become slaves to Rome. That explains why for decades the IDF paratroopers were sworn in at Masada, and they recited the mantra, "Masada will not fall again." Bar Kokhba is another example of Zionist thinkers and modern Israelis embracing an ancient hero. The Zionists and modern Israelis uncovered the sources and crystallized them into the culture of modern-day Jews. This was a fighting Jew, Bar Kokhba. He was a modern-day Samson, an updated Samson. One needs to understand that there were many legitimate reasons why the rabbis did not and had tremendous difficulty with each of these examples. For example, it should be clear that regarding Hanukkah, as great as a victory as it was in ousting the Syrian Greeks and rededicating the temple in Jerusalem, the Hasmonean dynasty quickly became corrupt and rotten to the core. Of course, regarding Masada, the rabbis could not possibly embrace a mass suicide, especially a mass suicide as a valid Jewish response And as for Bar Kokhba was a failed Messiah, not a false Messiah, a failed Messiah. The great Rabbi Akiva proclaimed Bar Kokhba the Messiah, which was very problematic rabbinically. In the more modern period, another excellent example of Jews fighting was the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, as well as the other ghetto uprisings and uprisings in camps during the Holocaust. Zionism and modern Israel attached and latched onto these examples of Jews rebelling and fighting against the Nazis. While these examples are apt, they really happened, they are hardly historically typical. As with the other examples, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising exemplifies courageous Jews fighting an overwhelming enemy. They were tough Jews. The image of Jews as a passive victim during the Holocaust did not sit well with the modern new Zionist Jew. This was the case despite the overwhelming numerical reality that only a handful engaged in armed rebellion against the Nazis, while millions upon millions did not. The image of the new Jew, the Israeli, as a fighter, is an essential component of the ethos of today's Israeli. That image lends strength to diaspora Jewry. In Israel, the Maccabees are an ancient symbol of that fighter. Coming up next, points of view. First up is a column from the Jerusalem Post. It was published on January 2nd, 2025. The column is written by Tova Herzl. You should note, by the way, that Tova is a former Israeli diplomat and was the ambassador to Belgium, as well as other places around the world representing Israel. So the column is entitled, Can Bennett Solve Israel's Dilemma? Opinion, subheadline, currently Bennett, eloquent, dynamic, successful, is marked as a likely successor to our longest-serving prime minister. This is how Tova Herzl begins. Polls indicate that a party headed by former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett would change Israel's parliamentary landscape, and that he is considered more suitable as a prime minister than the incumbent. Bennett, whose first position in politics was as Netanyahu's chief of staff for 2 years, 2006 to 2008, subsequently ran successfully in elections, headed several ministries, and was briefly prime minister of a short-lived government change from 2021 to 2022. Tova Herzl now describes Bennett. She explains why he is most probably the best option as the next leader of Israel. She writes, Bennett's record includes successful exits in high tech. Like Netanyahu, he served in a commando unit, and he too is fluent in English. Unlike Netanyahu, he is not on trial for corruption. Drama does not surround his family, and world leaders do not comment on his problematic relationship with truth. So far, so good. It appears that Bennett, while religiously observant and an avowed right-winger, does not believe that the biblical book of Joshua is a practical guide on how to run a country in the 21st century. Unlike some of Israel's current ruling coalition, the Messiah and redemption are not part of his political terminology. Tova now explains that Bennett understands the issues of international pressure that would be brought upon Israel, as well as the sanctions brought upon Israel if Israel does not resolve the Palestinian question. She writes, that's Bennett, he appears to understand that within the international community, it is impossible for each player to act on private beliefs, and that therefore there must be agreed upon rules. And he certainly realizes that the Palestinian question cannot be ignored. Palestinians living there would be offered Israeli citizenship in order to avoid accusations of apartheid. To his credit, Bennett understands the severe implications of branding Israel thus. Now Tova Herzl concludes asking Bennett, and for that matter, any other candidate for prime minister, to answer one single question, and this is how she writes it. Elections are scheduled for 2026. Early elections do not appear on the horizon, and politics in Israel are volatile. Currently, Bennett, eloquent, dynamic, successful, is marked as a likely successor to our longest-serving prime minister. This is why the following question is directed at him, but also All those on the right who would like to lead Israel are invited to answer. Do you have a plan regarding the territories that would be acceptable to anyone but Israel's right and its sprinkling of supporters around the world? If not, how do you plan to handle the boycotts and isolation we would face? Thank you, Tova Herzl, for an excellent, cogent column. The best part of the column is, the wonderful part is that it's focusing on future issues, not on today. Next up is a column by Gil Troy. It was also published in the Jerusalem Post. The column was published on January 1st, 2025. The column is entitled, How Israel Should Respond to the Houthis. Make them fear us more than we fear them. Subtitled, To many Americans keep asking, why is Israel still fighting? It's as if Israel's right to self-defense after October 7th had a 2-month expiration date. Gil, you should note, is one of my dearest friends. We have been friends for over 50 years. We first met as kids at Young Judean Camp Tel Yehuda in Berryville, New York. This is how Gil Troy begins. The Houthis' ongoing missile barrage provides the moral clarity Israelis need in battle and the motivation to keep fighting this multi-front war we've spent years trying to avoid. Soldiers have always reported there are no atheists in foxholes. Having been awakened Friday night by the latest air raid sirens in Jerusalem, I've discovered there are no pacifists in bomb shelters either. Israel's war has advanced impressively. Israelis and Westerners are safer today than we were on October 7th, even as many now fear many threats they long denied. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's relentless pressure cooker strategy has worked, leaving Hamas crushed, Hezbollah eclipsed, and Iran exposed, and Syria reeling. Never underestimate the Houthi slogan, God is greatest, death to America, death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews, victory to Islam. They mean it, as do Iranian mullahs. Troy now explains that the terrorists struck at Israel and caused harm, but that same terror unified Israel, he writes. The terrorists failed miserably, hurting us, yet mobilizing us. By joining, cheering on by worldwide intifada enablers, Hezbollah and Iranians, their proxies, and the Houthis have proven that too many in the Muslim world like to annihilate every Jew, from river to the sea, and often overseas too. Consider how American media covered the latest intercontinental ballistic missile launched from America's adversary, the Houthis, against America's ally, Israel, especially after the U.S. THAAD air defense system intercepted one super destructive missile. On Saturday night, the New York Times website ignored it, reporting, quote, as hopes rise for Gaza's ceasefire, conditions there have only worsened. Now Troy turns his attention to a critique of Haaretz, the left-wing Israeli daily. He writes that the response to the Houthis must be international. Shifting locally to Haaretz, which at least covered the Houthi attack, and the 2 Hamas rockets fired from Gaza towards Jerusalem, we also learned that Netanyahu may be making the same mistake with the Houthis as he did with Iran. Where did he err? Iran's nuclear program was a global issue Israelized by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, opposing the nuclear agreement. Necessary, devastating response to the Houthis should be international, not just Israeli. Well, welcome to the anti-Zionist Hall of Mirrors, where every story reflects one conclusion: it's Israel's fault. The invaluable statistics in the INSS Swords of Iron real-time tracker show that since October 7th, Israelis have scrambled for shelter 31,333 times, as over 27,000 rockets pounded the Jewish state. Yet, we are the aggressor. Palestinians launched 6,349 terror attacks, yet we're the oppressor. The media ignores the ongoing assaults against Israel from Gaza too, as Bibi-phobes blame Israel for defending itself, when the world farms out its dirty work of Houthi fighting to the Jews. Yes, the international coalition should crush Iran and the Houthis, but the US and the United Kingdom dithered, not properly protecting international shipping lanes, let alone Israel, because the Houthis and Iran have Israelicized the attack. Targeting Israel, Israel must respond. We count the missiles launched from Yemen and Tehran, overlooking how many thousands they could kill if their payloads of 200, 300, 400 kilos detonated in the neighborhood. One Pentagon weapons specialist, Bill LaPlante, told Axios, "I'm an engineer and a physicist, and I've been around missiles my whole career. But the increasingly sophisticated Iranian-supplied Houthi weapons are scary. They threatened Israel 2,000 kilometers away, international shipping, and America's defense posture worldwide." Now Troy begins to conclude, explaining that Israel's enemies are real. They do not want peace. The only way to get peace is by defeating the real enemies, Iran, Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. In the 1970s, he writes, reporters tried shaming Israel's warrior diplomat, Moshe Dayan, who was instrumental in negotiating the peace treaty with Egypt, into supporting a Palestinian state. However, as someone fluent in Arabic, who befriended many Palestinians himself, Dayan understood his enemies. No, it's not a flag they want, he scoffed. They want us to go. That's the problem. They don't want us to remain here. The only response then, as now, is to win clearly, to make them fear you more than you fear them. And as Dayan did, in the afterglow of our victory, if and when they're finally ready, turn from war-making to peacemaking. Again, an excellent column by Gil Troy. Thank you so very much. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 8 cartoons today. The first cartoon is about the US and the repeated delusional sense that peace is around the corner. 2025, that's the character, is reading his New Year's resolution for 2025. Peace in the Middle East, that's his resolution. He then says, I've got the strangest feeling of deja vu. And all around him are other resolutions for peace. Next up is 2025 again, telling Terror Grim Reaper, who gave you permission to come in here and make yourself at home? Terror answers, is that any way to talk to your roommate? In other words, terror is here to stay for a long time, unfortunately. Third up is a boat named Gaza in the shape of Gaza in the sea. It's filled with people and it's sinking. Moving along to the fourth cartoon is very depressing. 2024 is wrapped in a body bag and it's wrapped with the year 2025. The cartoonist is saying, out with 2024 death and in with 2025 death. In this fifth cartoon, Assad is holding up a table that Putin is sitting around. Assad is not an equal party in this, or any of these cartoons. In the sixth cartoon, Assad is depicted as running away from the blood with suitcases filled with money, of course. Seventh up is a cartoon entitled Assad's Legacy. Syria is all in shambles. Economy, international order, humanity, populations. Syria is all but destroyed. And finally, this eighth cartoon depicts Assad walking to an airplane. He's covered with blood. He's dressed as a butcher with a cleaver. He's the butcher of Syria. And he is saying now that this has happened, now that these issues have happened, he can have more time with my family, he says. There are unconfirmed rumors, you should note, circulating that Assad has been poisoned and has died in Russia, in Moscow. As of this taping, those are just rumors. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Things are changing in Lebanon, not just in Syria. And people affiliated with Hezbollah have erupted in protest in Beirut's Dahani neighborhood, following the detention of an Iranian plane at the city's airport on suspicion of carrying money intended for terrorists. At the same time, the Lebanese army closed the road to the airport, preventing the protesters from arriving. A Syrian delegation headed by newly appointed Foreign Minister Asad al-Shibani visited Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This was reported by Al Arabiya TV. Also, a steady stream of high-level diplomats, including foreign ministers, are visiting Syria one after the other. Syrian Defense Minister Prince Khalid al-Salman said in a post on X that he discussed with Syria's new foreign minister, al-Shibani, how best to support the political transition The meeting also includes Syria's defense minister and intelligence chief. Italy's foreign ministry summoned the Iranian ambassador to demand the immediate release of reporter Cecilia Sala, who was arrested in Tehran on December 19th while working under a regular journalistic visa. The ministry said in a statement that it had relayed serious concern over Salah's detention and stressed the need for humane treatment and respect for her human rights. The Iranian embassy in Rome later said that Salah was being given all humanitarian care necessary and, for the first time, linked her case to that of an Iranian national who was arrested last month in Milan, Italy, at the request of the United States. The Italian media have reported that Salah is in solitary confinement in the freezing cold cell with a neon light that's left on 24 hours a day. Her glasses have been confiscated, and she has hardly any contact with the outside world. Iran's official IRNA news agency reported that Salah has been arrested for violating the laws of the Islamic Republic. It gave no further information. Prosecutors indicted Alexander Granovsky, 29, of Petah Tikva in Israel, on charges of espionage and national security offenses for allegedly working on behalf of Iran in Israel. The indictment alleges that Granovsky communicated with an Iranian agent via a secret communication disappearing app called Telegram, and carried out tasks including photographing security installations, spray painting political graffiti, and setting fires and documenting the entrance of Knesset member Benny Gantz's home. Prosecutors say he was paid for all of his actions. Iranian Foreign Ministry summoned Saudi Arabia's ambassador in Tehran to protest the execution of 6 Iranians convicted of drug smuggling. This according to the Qatari newspaper, the New Arab Media Platform. Saudi Arabia's Interior Ministry had earlier announced the executions. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah was killed in an Israeli airstrike last year while inside the terror group's war operations room, according to new details disclosed by a senior Hezbollah official. A series of Israeli strikes flattened several buildings in Beirut's southern suburbs on September 27, 2024, killing Nasrallah. The Lebanese Health Ministry said that 6 people died. According to the news reports, Nasrallah and other senior officials were meeting underground. The assassination of Nasrallah, who led Hezbollah for 32 years, turned months of low-level strikes between Israel and Hezbollah into an all-out war that battered southern and eastern Lebanon for 2 months until a U.S.-brokered ceasefire took place on November 27th. In a quote from the site, His Eminence Hassan Nasrallah used this to lead the battle and war from this location. Top Hezbollah security official Wafik Safa told a news conference near the site where Nasrallah was killed. He said Nasrallah died in the war operations room. He did not offer other details. Lebanese media have reported that Safa was a target of Israeli airstrikes in central Beirut before the ceasefire, but appeared unscathed. If you remember at the time, in the end of September, I described to you exactly these facts, exactly as described now, in the war room itself. You remember I said if I were a fly on the wall. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Israel and the world are once again gearing up for the Eurovision, the 69th Eurovision, which will take place in Basel, Switzerland, May 13th to May 17th, 2025. Israel's representative is the person or the group that wins the next star or the Hakochav Haba competitive singing TV show. It's akin to our very own America's Got Talent. And now it's down to the very end. This performance we're going to watch is Daniel Weiss from Kibbutz Be'eri. His father was murdered by Hamas on October 7th, and his mother was kidnapped, and she died while in captivity, kidnapped by Hamas. To memorialize them, he performs barefoot. I have played his music for you in the past. This song is Hurricane. It should sound familiar. Israel's entry last year to Eurovision was sung by Aidan Golan. It is very powerful, and it was very powerful when Golan sang it. Weiss is singing together with Valerie Hamati, an Israeli Arab singer. Interestingly, one of the judges on the show, Kol Havaba, is Karen Peles. She is also one of the two authors of the song Hurricane. We should play the tape.
Riders of my symphony, play with me, look into your eyes and see. People walk away but never say goodbye.
Someone stole the moon tonight, took my light, everything's black and white. Who's the fool who told you boys don't cry? Hours and hours and hours, life is no game but it's ours. Why? The time goes wild.
Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. I got nothing to hide. Take it all and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me you'll hold me again. I'm still broken from this hurricane. This hurricane.
Fantasy, ecstasy, everything is meant to be. We shall pass, but love will never die. Hours and hours and hours, life is no game, but it's ours. While the time goes wild, every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. I get nothing to hide. Take it all and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me you'll never again. I'm still wet from this October rain. October rain. October לא צריך מילים גדולות, רק תפילות, אפילו אם קשה לראות, תמיד אתה משאיר לי אור אחד קטן.
Every time I hear them perform this song, I tear up. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.